welcome to Achieving Your Optimal Health. And we are actually on the 18th webinar in this series. We began June 12th. You can see the past recordings. We've got quite a library here. Under Las Vegas area trails, click on the health education link on the upper right, and you can see the entire series, 18 of our webinars. And to give you an idea, here's one on with Loya Riggin. You click on permanently transform your weight by identifying and eliminating subconscious obstacles. You click on that. There is a webinar replay link. You see the theme of the webinar here. And then there's a replay link. This would be a video. And just a quick summary, what you'll learn in the webinar, benefits of attending, who is Loya. So you can read about the presenter. And then here are the PowerPoint slides for a quick preview, followed by notes. And so every one of our webinars has all these elements in it. So this is our entire series. And the whole focus of this series is on helping people to achieve their optimal health, to look at where you are now, where you'd like to be, set a goal, and how to navigate the gap between where you are and the goal you'd like to achieve. One thing that we focus on in all of our presentations is what we call the 5 pillars of optimal health. Health, encompasses physical health, mental health, emotional health, social, and spiritual. So each of our presenters in their area are touching upon these 5 areas of health. And so now let's go ahead and turn to our presenter for the day, Annie Emprima-Martin, and her webinar is focused on quantum healing hypnosis. A little bit about Annie is that Annie's a spiritual empowerment facilitator and a quantum healing practitioner. She's a mom, a woman veteran, and a spiritual empowerment coach. The quantum healing technique she has practiced over a number of years, and she's also a startup investor and service disabled veterans business owner. Her 3 areas of focus are veterans, entrepreneurs, and spiritual empowerment. She coaches spiritually guided startups, business professionals, executives, and other individuals to clear out old rules and blocks, to remove trapped emotions, align beliefs with business work, and intensify natural and spiritual gifts. She's a tour guide facilitator with quantum healing hypnosis technique, where physical injuries, beliefs, and trapped energies can literally be cleared out so healing and spiritual gifts can be brought in. And so the idea today to focus on is, do you have some goal in your life? Have you ever set a goal or an intention, and you've studied how to accomplish that goal? You have put all your mental powers into accomplishing that goal. You may have had therapy. You may have a mentor, a coach. It could be weight loss. It could be growing your business. It could be sales. It could be a relationship. But you have set an intention to accomplish a goal, and somehow you keep encountering some kind of barrier or block, and you don't understand why that barrier keeps appearing. you may be self-sabotaging. Um, and what this means is there's something likely in your subconscious, there's a barrier that is causing you to be unable to accomplish that goal, no matter how hard you try. You know, the amazing thing about Annie is she has focused her entire career on helping people to get in touch with those subconscious obstacles and to experience some amazing breakthroughs. At this point, as Annie begins, I want you to think of a goal. Put a goal in mind, and one that you have tried again and again, and you don't know why you can't accomplish it. Put that in mind, and then let's hear what Annie has to say.
So thank you, David. My name is Annie Emprima-Martin. I'm a spiritual empowerment coach. If anyone wants to follow me on Instagram or Facebook, it's at one.intuitive.catalyst. And in this webinar, this particular webinar, we're focusing on quantum healing. I want to talk about what it is and what it is not. I want to define what I mean when I say subconscious. I want to touch on spiritual gifts and how they play a role in this lifetime and how I play a role in those with spiritual gifts, and then ways to lead the body in self-healing using quantum healing. So when we typically talk about the subconscious, we think of the mind. So I want to talk about science and neuroanatomy first. So I'm going to move this screen a little bit because it's covering my little pictures. When we talk about quantum healing hypnosis, we use the word hypnosis because 40-something years ago, when Dolores Cannon, 50 years ago, when Dolores Cannon was starting her work and her research, she was a hypnotist. So when she fell into quantum healing, she named it what she thought it most resembled. And I'm going to go into it later in the slides, the difference between the mind driving and the soul driving. So we're first going to look at the mind and how the mind stores information. So I'm going to set my timer too so I have an idea of where we are in time. When we're dealing with daily operational, we're dealing with the front part of the brain. So information comes into us, it's going to come in, and we're going to decipher what to do with that information, the decision-making piece from the prefrontal cortex. So I only work with clients that are 27 years and older because I am an empowerment coach. I do a lot of spiritual work where we are moving into the second zone. So if the individuals don't have a fully developed prefrontal cortex, I'm going to scare them because their decision-making skills have not reached a full maturity in the development. So the next part, the back of the brain, we're going into where our RAM zone is. If we were to look at it as human software, this is where we would store from short-term to long-term. It would go into that center zone. And then the information in the very back is what I call the archive. So it's when information that we experience but we no longer remember, top of mind awareness, it may be stored deep down into the archive. So trauma from 3 years old, when a parent said, "You're not worth anything," that statement got stored in the brain somewhere. And that somewhere is what I call the lockbox, the archive in the back of the brain. So you'll hear me use, if anyone has a session with me, I'll talk about, we're going to go back, we're going way back. I'm also referencing spiritual timelines, but scientifically, this is the back of the brain. And so when I'm working with clients, I'm working with them, if we go to the chart on the left, in the alpha and theta zones. I really want people to be in the theta zone because I can get a lot more information and we share more information from that place. So now let's look at it from the soul side. So I use this analogy pretty frequently about who's driving the vehicle. Very often the mind is the driver, the soul is the one that's honoring free will in the passenger seat, just going for the journey where the mind wants to take the collective, and then the body is always the kid trapped in the back seat. strapped down. The body doesn't get to choose where they're going for the road trip. The body doesn't get to choose when they're going to stop for snacks along the way. The body doesn't get to choose. It's like a little kid, and the parent is driving. So whatever the mind wants to do, if the mind is driving, it's going to change the radio channels. It's going to pick the speed, if it wants to go above the speed limit or below the speed limit, be a risk taker or not. And then the body in the back seat just has to respond. When I'm doing work, a typical hypnotist is going to work with the mind as the driver and going into those theta states. I switch out the drivers, and I want the soul to be the driver. Because as you see here with this picture of these ovals, if we look at it, let's assume that this is any human. When we expand our energy outward, the more we expand, so the more we meditate, the more we work with visualization and right brain, the more we're inviting the soul to be a part of the decision-making on this road trip called life. And the more it removes that monkey mind from the decision-making process. So what we really want is we want the soul to be the driver and the mind to be the co-pilot in the passenger seat. That's the ideal, but this is Earth, and that doesn't always work that way. So down here, if you see the comfort levels, when I talk about comfort levels, I'll go into some pictures in a couple of slides, but when I'm doing quantum healing, just to give you a background before we start talking about it deeper, I may hit, I don't know if you can see my cursor, that very first circle closest to the body, that is going to have conversations. The dialogue is going to be very much about personality because it's blending so much with the ego in the mind. The deeper we go, the further to the back of the mind we get in the sessions, the deeper we're going to get, the more spiritual the answer, the more objective the answer. And it'll speak in we. Because the soul never speaks in I. There is no ego in the soul. It'll say, we are healing the body. During a session, it'll also say things like, we want her, assume the client is female, her to know that she's loved. We are here for her. We are, and it's always using this third person because it's encompassing everyone in the car, the body, the mind, and the soul. And it's speaking like that mom that's like, okay, kids, what do we all want? Let's all like come to a conclusion, like a consensus on what we want for snacks. The mind doesn't think like that. It doesn't say, what does the body want? What does the soul want? The mind is ego. So to give you a quick backdrop before we get a little bit deeper in the conversation. So I want to show you a clip. And this clip is from the Bible Project. So it's using a lot of Christian terms, but it's really powerful in understanding multidimensional perspective.
So I've got a question that's always bothered me. The Bible says there's one God, but in other parts of the Bible, God is three: Father, Son, and Spirit. How can it be both?
Yeah, this is a question that has mystified people for thousands of years. And while we can't fully explain it, I think we can better understand what it is that we can't fully understand.
What do you mean?
Well, think of it this way. Here's a two-dimensional plane. And then here's an object with 3 dimensions that's going to pass through the 2D plane.
Okay, right. From this perspective, the 3D objects above and below the plane.
So now it makes sense. But imagine you were a 2D person stuck on the 2D plane. What would you see?
I don't know. What would I see?
Well, it would look like this.
Oh, yeah, okay. From this perspective, it looks impossible. It's one object, and then 2 objects, and then 3.
But in reality, they're all one, just not in a way you're capable of understanding.
Let's move down to the next. So that's really what we're looking at. We are trying to use cultural language that's limited dimensionally to understand quantum healing, which is multidimensional. Mind, body, and soul are one. They just have separate attributes to describe each version of the whole. So quantum healing, as I had mentioned, Dolores Cannon created quantum healing hypnosis technique many decades ago, somewhat by accident, but she was destined to do this. And so I'm a practitioner through QHHT, but intuitively, I have picked up in the past few months additional tools that allow me to modify the methods. So we would be going beyond quantum healing. And so I can do beyond quantum healing where I'm mixing modalities, and I can do traditional QHHT. It all depends on the individual and what their soul wishes to have. So sometimes I get the information about a half an hour before the people arrive on what's going to be best for the person to put them in a stronger place on their path. And we, depending on what religious belief you are, we look at it as past life regression. But it's not always. It's really about going to the most appropriate time and place that is in the back of the mind. Sometimes it is a past life. If someone's very religious, they're not going to go into a past life. They will stay in this lifetime. And the soul, the spirit will use different pictures and moments in time that most closely relate to the message it's trying to relay to the person for the particular session, the theme for the session. I want to talk about trapped emotions because trapped emotions are a huge part in what I do. I can't empower someone. We can't give someone more empowerment if they're not going to let go of something that's weighing them down. And I'll use the word weight because in many cases, people who carry a lot of emotional baggage physically carry weight that matches that emotional trauma. And so we can get emotions from 3 different ways. From my metaphysical background, you can get it from an inheritance, like grandma had trauma, grandma was pregnant with mom developed the eggs while a fetus developed the eggs for you, and that trauma got inherited through the DNA. We can also inherit emotions through childhood. Something happened when we were 3, it got embedded in the back of the memory, we're now still carrying that message. Or it can be something where we carried it forward from a past life, if that's part of your belief system. So very often we'll find that there are emotions like fear that have no relation to the current lifetime, like something irrational, like fear of being in a large body of water. And in a quantum healing session, the visual goes to a part where they drowned in a lake because of reckless behavior 100 years ago. And so that emotion got carried forward by accident in the master memory, and it's somewhat inconveniencing the person in this lifetime. And then in quantum healing, it's really beautiful because we're allowing the soul to drive. The soul knows exactly where the keys are to unlock the vault doors. So if there's a message that's very loving, like that trauma from when you were 3 was not yours, it belongs to your parents, and we're going to release that, because we're talking in the we, the third person. The soul knows exactly where that key is to unlock that door and release that emotion, and it heals it as it's leaving the body. And so this is a beautiful, very loving way to collect the keys, what I call the keys, to unlock the doors that allow people to heal first before we empower them. And I want to talk about some myths. I know that when the people that I come across, sometimes we get some myths. One of them is, I don't want to do this because I'm afraid I'll get my mind will get trapped in itself. You have a better chance of trapping your mind with narcotics than you do with hypnosis or quantum healing. It's a very interactive session. Most people are very much aware of what's happening. If you get super relaxed, you might not, but you might not remember a conversation when you're super tired naturally. So no, you won't get lost in your mind. You won't get trapped in your mind. Even if you are somewhat suggestible, meaning like if you're every day, if I walk by you and I insult you about your jacket and that upsets you, you might be suggestive during a hypnosis session, but if you don't care about those things when you're fully awake, you're not going to care about if I say something by accident during the session. Like I may say something very often, the person says, no, that's not correct. It's more like this. And I then have a better understanding of what's happening. So you will not get trapped in your mind at all. And if I say something, even by accident, like trying to understand what you're relaying back to me and I don't understand, I'll say I don't understand. And very often I'm told, no, it's more like this. It's a correction. I've heard, oh, the Bible says this is witchcraft. That is a myth. And what I've learned to do is then ask them how they define witchcraft, and there's usually no definition. So how can we be afraid of something when we don't even know what it is? And so then I go in and I explain, and then we'll have this conversation about white magic and black magic. And then I say, well, white magic is really what most Native Americans are using. It's really what a lot of Eastern cultures using. It's using intention or natural medicines or whatever it may be to put good intention into the universe. And how can we argue with anyone that's trying to do something better to better the greater good for all? And then other things are, nope, this is someone said to me about spiritual bypass, and they weren't using it in the correct statement of spiritual bypass. And it's, no, you're not, you are putting your soul in charge. Your soul is the driver. You're not bypassing the soul and kicking it out of the vehicle. It is having an opportunity to integrate all facets of the whole, like we saw in the video. So those are some things. I use these comfort levels from 1 to 10 to understand the clients that I'm working with, where they're coming from. So if it's someone that has very little background in fourth dimension work, we're probably working at level 1. And these folks are usually my business consulting clients that are like, I appreciate the intuitiveness, but I really don't like the spiritual language. I'm not ready for that. So we stay at level 1. And then I have clients who are like, yeah, I'm always in 5th dimension. I know I have work to do on other dimensions. Let's go swimming and find Atlantis. And so anywhere in the middle, I'll adjust the sessions to where the people are and where their comfort level is. So if they come in to do a quantum healing session and they're really swimming with floaties, we're only going to get, if we remember the diagram back with the female silhouette with the circles, we're only going to get 1 or 2 circles out. If it's someone who understands lost knowledge, we're going to get to a very deep, wide radius in that spiritual bubble, the expansion energy, and they will be speaking in vibration. It's really cool. So wherever people are is where we'll meet. Reasons to have a quantum session. Curiosity of past lives is usually the first one, the most common that I get. I don't do sessions with people who are just curious about past lives because I care about empowering people in this lifetime. And what happened back in the past is not relevant. But if we need to go through past lives to get the message, then we go through past lives to get the message. Many people want to understand roles of people in this current lifetime, like why are they repeating cycles, like marrying the same kind of person, or why are they having the same scenarios looping through their life over and over again, even though it's different jobs, different coworkers, the roles are the same and the play is the same. So that's a reason. Medical mysteries, medical Western medicine cannot identify what's going on. Or they want to manage it and the person wants to heal it. So we can do healing for that purpose. Very often I've had people, this is about maybe 4 or 5 in the past 6 months, where someone had a surgery scheduled or they were getting ready to schedule a surgery. And during the quantum healing, the soul and the mind collectively healed the body so that they didn't need the surgery. So it's fibroids, back surgery, shoulder. So I guess there were more, because it's very easy. When you're out in those outer layers, the soul can do a whole lot more than it can when we're tapping into the narrower, the shorter radius levels. Physical discomfort, so things like arthritis, Fibromyalgia, headaches, all of those things also can be alleviated. And very often there's a story for it. And I'll show it later in the books. If we have a little bit extra time, I'll go in depth with the physical discomfort piece and how Samprapti, how emotions then manifest into physical ailments. Spiritual gifts are a huge piece of what I do, because a lot of times it's the people who come from very religious backgrounds that are spiritually awakening, and they are caught in this cognitive dissonance of, how do I accept this gift, and how do when I'm in a world of religious people that feel that it's witchcraft. So how do I have a clairvoyant spiritual gift and have people that tell me that that's not acceptable? And they get caught where their body and their belief systems are in not in alignment. There's a disconnection. Life purpose is always a question that we'll ask. What is the purpose in this lifetime, and how can the person fulfill that purpose in a greater way? During the session, the individuals, I want them to be super relaxed, very relaxed as possible. It's a very interactive conversation, and the person during the session is going to be doing a whole lot of talking. They may reconnect with their team, which is the spiritual teams, soul team, any of the deeper layers of our whole that come in to welcome us, to remind us that we're not alone on this journey. And then family. Sometimes it's family from past lives that are identified, and sometimes it's deceased members. It's really up to what the individual needs in that moment. The imagery that we use is very vivid, and it can be very illogical at times. So people need to realize that it may be very illogical, and that's okay. The dreamlike imagery could be very Kafka-ish or Picasso-ish, or just out of sequence, and that's perfectly okay. The healed ailments, the ailments may be healed during the session. Sometimes it takes a couple weeks after. It all depends on the depth of the discomfort that the body is working with, and how safe it is to eliminate that discomfort. Clarity and answers come in, and always individuals will wake up feeling well rested. So what to expect after a session? A lot of released emotion, and we'll hear that. It's very verbal. The client will relay back, like, we're releasing the emotion. We're telling him or her that we love him or her. That this allergy was because of a childhood trauma. And for example, there was a client that I had a couple months ago who had been scratched by her grandmother's cat. And so she wanted to remove the allergy, but we needed to find out why first. And so the soul shared that when she was 2, she got scratched. She was very fearful of the cat. And so she developed allergies. Her body developed the allergies as a protective measure to keep her from having to go near the cat. And it just continued through her adult life. So during the session, her soul was like, no, she's not really allergic to cats. She did it as a defense mechanism. It's okay. She's not allergic to cats anymore. And I asked, like, so how was she know? And just go pet a cat. She's fine. We tend to have a greater level of compassion for the people in our life, because we during this session can see the whole lifespan if we need to, if that's part of the message coming to us. And it's a lot easier to understand why there was childhood trauma or physical abuse or something that we would be maybe regretful or resentful or angry about, to understand how that moment came to be. The discomfort will subside, like I mentioned. The spiritual gifts usually awaken immediately after a session, especially intuition. So if someone went into a session with a little bit of intuition, they're going to come out with a lot of intuition. Sometimes if the information is very private and it's not something that I should be privy to, the soul will tell the person that it'll come to them in a dream. We'll bring the answers to him or her in a dream. Sometimes the people during a session will remember everything. Sometimes they don't remember the deeper levels, and it's recorded either way, so nothing is missed. So I've got some books. Any questions so far?
Well, I have a question, Annie.
Okay.
When I'm working with a business coach,
Yep.
there are things that I do with that business coach, and there are things I do between sessions.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm working with a personal trainer, it's the same thing. There are things I do with that person, things between sessions. A chiropractor, the same thing. And so it's like a partnership. It's a combination of what happens in the session and what happens between sessions to help me to advance, myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering, how does that relationship work with you and your clients? Are there things that definitely, as I'm looking at this, I'm looking at things that happen in the session because a lot of this was, a lot of this is new to me, and it's almost, there's like something telling me, well, this is something you do with Annie, and
Yep.
And it's not something that you can advance on your own also. Is that the case, or are there practices that a person can engage in? You showed like 10 levels from, one of them was floaties, I remember.
Yeah.
But you had the 10 different levels, and you mentioned that you can work with people. You have more of a chance to work with people the further, like when they get to 5D,
Yep.
4D and 5D, as opposed to a 3D person. So is there a way that a person can move forward so that they get more out of a session with you, as opposed to, no, you've got to do all of this with Annie? How does that work?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a natural intensifier, which means that if someone has anger or negative emotion, I'm going to amplify it. If they have joy, compassion, love, I'm going to amplify it. I'm going to amplify and intensify who someone naturally is.
Mm-hmm.
So if they have a little bit of a spiritual gift, during a coaching session, that spiritual gift will start like zapping open. So very, very often with clients that are in the 4D zone, the ones that don't have quite, they've let go of a lot of fear.
Mm-hmm.
The 3D folks still have some fear. They're not comfortable swimming in the deeper end. But the 4D folks, they will start to pick up abilities, and then between sessions, I expect them to work on those abilities, so that when we come back, we're all automatically in the next level. But it's free will and free choice, right? We're going to go as fast as all participants in the group are willing to go. So I can only go with as fast as my client is ready to go. And if they still have fear and they still have things to work on, that's part of their journey.
And you can't move to, like if a person was working with you, was getting ready to work with you, and they said, I want to start out in the 4D level, they really can't do that apart from sessions with you. Let's say they're 3D right now. They're not going to move to 4D except through a session with you.
They can do it naturally. They're going to naturally, spiritual awakening. I was in the middle of my deployment, and it was certainly not by choice when it occurred. So it's going to happen with or without anyone's permission.
Mm-hmm.
But I will intensify the process, so I'll speed it up. Someone working with me will get the process will be the duration, the cycle will be shortened because I'm going to intensify them through to the next level.
Okay, I guess what I'm looking for is practices. Are there self practices a person can engage in? Or is this totally like, if you're going to a heart surgeon, obviously there are some things you could do. You could change your diet, you could exercise. I mean, there are a number of things you could do, but you're not going to accomplish what the surgeon could accomplish. Are you like the surgeon? Or
I
are you
send
like,
them books. I task people to
Okay.
read books.
Okay.
Depending on where they are. So like if there's a lot of faith, but they're really curious about the spiritual, metaphysical world, but they have a lot of fear,
Mhm.
The Universe Has Your Back is a great book for breaking that down. If they're coming from a Christian background and they think a lot of the things that I do was mysticism, this breaks it down and compares a lot of the things in science that we have as irrefutable pieces of science. Rob Bell does a fantastic job in this book of showing that. So most of my homework is read this book and have it unlock the wisdom that's inside this book.
Okay. Other questions for Annie?
No, but I can say that from having had a session with her, it was a very interesting experience of the first one, I could remember a lot of it. The second one, I did not have a whole lot of memory about.
Because you went a whole lot deeper.
But it was really, I feel like it did shift some things for me that needed to shift, and things began to show up for me in ways that showed me how significant that session had been for me.
Yeah.
Whether it was more clients coming to me, more people that I needed to meet.
Oops, you muted
It's
yourself,
muted.
Holly.
All I did was wave my hand. How about that? I muted myself by waving my hand. So it could be, that it could have been, like it's showing up in meeting my tribe of people, more from my tribe of people, connecting with the right people, the right clients coming to me.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So does this work on everyone? I mean, in other words, some people think they cannot be hypnotized. If they're unwilling or unbelieving, can you make progress with someone like that?
I won't even work with someone who's unwilling because it's going to be a whole lot of work and I want to play.
Okay. Do you do typically multiple sessions, or does one session accomplish something, or is it vary depending on the person?
One session will do a whole lot.
Okay.
And it'll go back to how fast the person wants to progress. Do they want to do one session and then wait a year for everything to unfold? Or do a session 6 weeks after and amplify it to the next level again? It really, what I find is that it all depends on the person's mission, personal legend, life purpose, whatever language we use. If they know they have something big to do, they typically want to do 2 to 3 sessions in a 6-month period.
Okay. It's interesting.
But one is powerful on its own.
Okay. Yeah, I totally believe that a lot of the physical things that people experience are based in emotions, and I think you can almost make yourself sick just by carrying around emotions, and it's like something you can't get out of necessarily. So this sounds like something that could really help.
Literally make yourself sick.
Yeah, I've seen it. So, okay. Thank you.
I'd go back to something that Holly said, an experience she had. She said that the first session, she was aware of the whole session. The next session, she was not aware but it's, and Annie was saying that you know, Holly went deeper in that session, even though she wasn't aware. And I think back to anything that's entirely foreign or new that I've ever done. And I remember the first time that I went off trail, and I do a lot of trail running on trails in the mountains. And I was very linear most of the time because I'm on this trail and I just stay on the trail. The first time I decided to go off trail and into the wilderness, and now suddenly it's like three-dimensional. I'm aware of everything, but I'm also scared to death because I've got all these thoughts going through my mind that oh my gosh, I'm going to get lost. You know, something's going to eat me. I'm it's something bad is going to happen because I'm off the trail and I don't trust this area off the trail. I remember the first time I was so aware of my fears that I couldn't really experience what it was like to really be in nature and to blend with nature. But over time, it's like that whole experience opened to me. And I'm almost thinking that working with you, Annie, would be something similar to that. The very first time you're kind of wondering, well, am I going to be hypnotized? Am I going to be under someone's control? Because you see all these movies of people, you know, you are a dog.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're going to shoot the president in when I give you the secret command word, and so
I'll throw that in the myth list.
I know. So there's a lot of myths, and those myths and that fear may cause a person to stay a little more awake the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the more they experience that, the more relaxed they are, the deeper they can go. I don't know. It's just a.
No, you're on point. It's absolutely, it's about trust
Mm-hmm.
and confidence in the person. When you're going through something for the first time, you're going to be more alert of what's happening because it's new. Just like riding a bike, you get on the bike the first time, or even a motorcycle or a car, do I have the seatbelt on? Are the mirrors adjusted, right? You're in this, is everything right? But then 10 years after driving a car, you just get in the car and you drive. You don't even think about it. It's autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
The first session, there's more awareness and a little bit, I don't want to say less trust, but the second time you know what's happening, I know what's happening. We already know your method. So it's actually a much shorter session too. It's about an hour and a half shorter than the typical 4 to 6 hour session. Yeah.
Well, very amazing. It sounds like, since so much of the mind is subconscious, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's like something like 90% and only 10% is our conscious. Something just really dramatic. And it would seem that there's a lot of stuff in that subconscious that if you can tap into it,
Mm-hmm.
you can experience some real, forward momentum where you've been blocked before.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When we remove fear from the storyline, we automatically start vibrating at a higher higher frequency. And when we're vibrating at the higher frequency, by default, we're going to attract higher frequency outcomes.
So I can see you working with athletes, with salespeople, with business owners, with people that are having relationship issues, anyone that has a goal and they can't seem to accomplish it.
Salespeople are the easiest because we can measure it in sales. Right? It's like a very quantifiable method. Business owners, maybe last month I had a client, I had someone here, did a session, literally the next day she landed a $25,000 contract. It cleared out that much blockage that it just opened this, it landed right in her lap. And so those are very common things that, hey, Annie, I just want to thank you. This happened, or this, I just met this person, and it's within a few days, because that's how powerful the universe is, how powerful God works. You consciously remove the block, and it allows that energy to flow through the channel.
Other questions? I know you do a lot with veterans, with the military. What is some of your work with the military?
I do work with, I do more work with women with PTSD from MST, but I do have some veterans with PTSD.
What's MST?
Military sexual trauma.
Okay.
And I do have a few. It is a little bit, it takes a whole lot more patience, because usually PTSD with the clients that I've seen are also linked to childhood rules that no longer apply to them. And so there's a distrust automatically. Even before the PTSD, the traumatic event occurred, there was a distrust. So that's really more of a mental therapist, mental health counselor's lane, to bring them up to the midpoint, and then I'll take over once they're ready to go from midpoint forward.
Okay. And I've noticed, I don't know where I saw this, but I saw pictures of you with people who are in political positions, and I guess you have a kind of, part of your work has to do with government and politics. But can you tell me something about that?
I sit on a board for the VA, the Southern Nevada Veteran Healthcare System.
Okay.
I sit on the state of Nevada, the Veteran and Family group, and then I sit on Women Veteran Advisory Committee for the state of Nevada. And so I, by default of sitting on those committees and councils, I have exposure to a lot of the political folks that want to make change for veterans. So, and I'm purple. I don't vote blue or red. I'm very neutral. And so I get invited to parties.
And what would you like to accomplish? What do you see as some of the largest needs that are out there that your involvement could make a difference?
I'm an angel investor, which is kind of interesting, because I'm incredibly right-brained and incredibly left-brained, and I confuse the middle brain part of my body. I love investing. I love business. I love entrepreneurship. So I look at things that are going to support small business, like all of us on the call, the webinar. How do we support each other in small business? How do we provide more resources for small business, especially veteran business owners? Because 1 in 4 retirees from the military want to start their own business. We just don't have a lot of funding sources. And so I am a volunteer with Startup NV as an investor, and I look at the world from that side. But then also the social service pieces. Can we reduce the amount of drug addiction, incarceration, prescription opioid medication by connecting more, by honoring people for who they are, by helping them remove shame and guilt, by alleviating a lot of those heavy emotions that would cause someone to self-medicate? Can we uplift people with connection and purpose? And a lot of this is spiritual empowerment. Can we reduce the amount of suicides in our communities by connecting people to their belief systems that honor them in the best way possible?
Wow.
And so politically, I work with these folks to say, if you want to focus on opioid addiction, focus on the disconnection that caused that opioid addiction. Focus on the cognitive dissonance between belief systems of being the moral compass piece and the moral wound piece of going to combat, being in combat, and yet your religious beliefs say do not kill. So let's focus on those things first. And it might take 2 or 3 generations, but we can't reduce a crisis if we're not facing the emotional pieces that started it to begin with.
Wow, that seems like a real valuable influence in the political arena. The ancient Greeks talked about philosopher kings and what difference it would make if philosophers were kings and political rulers. And it seems like that whole mentality and perspective is pretty rare in politics.
Yeah.
I can see that as a real calling.
And who's driving? The mind that speaks in I, or the soul that says what's in the greatest good for everyone involved?
Wow.
And we see that divide in various politicians across the nation, who's speaking in the we and who's speaking in the I, and what their agendas are behind their drivers.
Well, I sincerely hope that your mentality and perspective can permeate a little of the political scene, and I can see where it's needed on both sides of the aisle and where it would be a purple influence.
So imagine this. Imagine if I only touch 10 people with quantum healing that that remove emotional blocks, that they're now empowered to do what they were put on this earth to do. They're doing their personal legend, their life purpose. If I only empower 10 people and those 10 people go out into the world and empower 10 people, that spread will bring the same outcome, just slower. Versus 100 people clearing their emotional blocks and doing their thing versus 1,000 people. And it's not about any one religion. And that was a message that came to me when I was a teenager. Don't align with any one religion. Every religion has some truth to it. And I didn't really understand the depth of what that meant until I started doing this work and realized we're all referring to the same tree. Regardless of religion, science, metaphysics, spirituality, religious viewpoint, we're all referring to some section of a tree saying that this is our truth. But if you're on the low branch and you're at the tip of the tree, you're going to have 2 different views from the same tree. It's not until we zoom up, zoom out, and we look at the tree from an aerial perspective that we realize we're all talking about the same thing, just using different language.
So there's an element in your intention that really has to do with world transformation.
100-year plan.
That is truly amazing. And when I look at the history of large changes in the world, it does follow that kind of pattern where it's not so much this huge thing that occurs, but it's something that occurs with one person that multiplies to 2 to 4 to 8 and grows in a grassroots way. That's how Christianity grew to become a world religion. Started out with just a few people, and it grew, and it seems like real solid transformation that's sustainable.
Yeah.
Tends to grow that way, and this seems to be a key to this kind of transformation that we need so greatly. Is the mindset that you're talking about, that you represent, that you stand for.
And we all play a part. There are things that Holly does that I cannot do. There are things that Loya does that I cannot do. But if we all come together, how powerful is that? So it's really about all of us taking what small sector of the pie that we represent and coming together and becoming the whole as a community.
Very good. Any other questions? Well, this concludes our webinar for today. And Michelle, you are presenting in 2 weeks. So
Yes, I'll be
give
ready.
us a little thumbnail idea of what you're going to present.
I'm going to talk about what kind of what the secrets are that your DNA can reveal about your health, your fitness, your longevity. Yeah, there's a lot there. It's not just 23andMe revealing all of the genetic defects you have, but what I do is work with genetic wellness testing. So that's on the other side. It's going to show you what you can do to improve things.
Tremendous.
Yeah.
Good. Looking forward to that.
Thank you.